What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tierfon Orbital. I'm here today to talk about your mom. So, I would like to talk about an install that I completed, a very special install that I completed on a 7Chambers MoM, or Magic of Myth hilt, right? So this is a hilt that is based off of Luke's cave scene hilt. In my opinion, this is the most accurate, most beautiful representation of Luke's cave scene hilt. So this is actually, so it's funny because this hilt is only seen in a deleted scene from the film. And this is one of my favorite hilts. And the offering from 7Chambers, when it was released, in my opinion, was the best. They are no longer available, unfortunately, but this was the most accurate, one of the most accurate in my opinion, right? So a while back, I think this was like over a year ago, I designed for my personal mom, I designed a special crystal reveal, right? And they're a little hard to come by, especially empty nowadays. But I did have a customer reach out to me with an empty that actually had the helper board as well, unused, that wanted an install with that same crystal reveal. So I went about and put the same install in this hilt, and I'm really happy with the result, right? In my personal install, I went with a titanium outer core in the crystal chamber. This one is a little bit different in that the whole crystal chamber is all brass, right? Weathered brass. But I do want to come into fusion and talk a little bit about this particular chassis because it is a little bit intricate how I assemble it and how I install it. And then obviously we'll come up top and talk about the demo, talk about the hilt rather, talk about how to use it, and then we'll put a blade in it, right? So anyhow, let's come into fusion, talking about this chassis. All right, so a lot of parts in this chassis. I'm going to start at the bottom, right? So as you can tell, I am a child, right? So I have your mom embossed at the bottom. So this is a speaker pod setup, right? So I do have a speaker pod in the pommel of this hilt that houses a 28 millimeter speaker. It is from Smuggler's Outpost. I do have Tierfon Orbital embossed at the bottom here. I do utilize a speaker pogo pin set from Smuggler's Outpost. The thing I like about the speaker set or the pogo set from Smuggler's is that it has a perforated line in it, so you can cut it. That way you can add, a kill switch down here, or you can add, like what I do is I add in these cases, I add a USB-C port, right? So that'll give me plenty of room to add that. So I have a speaker pogo set down here, and there is a USB-C port as well. So this is how we get access to the board as well as charge the battery. This is a fully internal battery and board setup, right? So this is where you would plug in a USB-C cable to both charge your battery and upload config, add fonts, etc. One thing I do need to mention, right? I don't mention this enough, right? When you are adding fonts via your USB cable, right? When you're transferring data, it is very slow with Profi, right? It is like a snail's pace uploading fonts via the USB. Also, you really, really need to make sure you are ejecting that USB drive. Like if you're a Windows user, you need to right click that USB drive and eject it from your machine. If you just yank that USB cable, you have the potential of corrupting that SD card. It'll still work, but you will not be able to add more fonts to your board. It has a potential for that happening. I'm not saying it always will happen, but I have seen that happen. That is one of the downsides of transferring data through USB. You just need to make sure you're aware of that. There has been talk of with Profi V3 that has there are less chances of that happening with Profi V3, which is this is a Profi V3 build. But just be aware, just use best practices. Make sure you're ejecting your board when you're finishing. with your config and all that, right? So that is where we make a connection to the speaker pod in the pommel, right? So I wire up everything in here. I glue that cap to the bottom of the chassis. I do have this embossed in the bottom. If you can read this, you have pulled the chassis out too much, because this chassis is supposed to stay inside of the hilt. Just a little funny thing. So this is the same chassis that I put in my personal hilt, right? So I just kind of carried over all of the same things I had on that one with this one. Light greebly work on both sides, even though you won't see any of this. This will all be on the inside of the hilt, essentially, right? On this side, there's an indentation for that USB-C charging module, right? So I get these from the Custom Saber shop. This is it's essentially a trickle charge, right? So that is when you plug that USB-C port at the bottom of the hilt, this will charge the 18650 battery, right? So that is where that sits. Along the other side, this is where I bring all of my leads out to that control box, right? So all the leads for the helper board come through here. Profi board sits here. There is enough room here for the USB, the micro USB cable, right? So we have to have a micro USB that is plugged into the Profi board. That is how we get our data transfer. Battery sits around here. I do not do a hardwire battery in these builds. I do not like doing hardwire batteries, right? So this is just a regular 18650 battery that just sits in here. Okay. And that is it, right? So anyone who has so anyone who has wired up a MoM will tell you that it is a little it's a little hair raising, right? So you're wiring up a live battery, okay? Then you've got to fish hot wires through the hilt, right? Up into that control box. So even though you're bringing up two hot positive battery leads, I'm always nervous when I do these. Even though I make sure that I heat shrink the end of the wires. It's just every time I do these, I'm shaking, right? I just get a little nervous anytime I'm wiring hot battery, right? So yeah, anyway, that's where our leads come out to the control box. Up top, okay, there is a cap here. So in these three holes, I have knurled brass lugs. Okay, they get heat pressed into this ring. All right, so this ring, the whole chassis was printed off in PLA carbon fiber, right? So I heat press those brass rods into this ring, so they essentially get fused into this ring. Then the entire core, crystal chamber core, let me move this part down. This bottom core is screwed in place into those brass lugs with very small very small Phillips screws. Okay, it's hard to visualize here, but that is essentially how the entire upper crystal chamber secures to the bottom chassis with three lugs here. Okay, there is a small clear resin insert with a 11 neopixel. Let me get this out of the way. There is an 11 neopixel stock ring under here for some animation. Then I bring my leads up through the center of this, and they come all the way up through to the center of this crystal chamber. So these gray tubes here, let me center this, sorry. These gray tubes here, on the final build, these are actually brass tubes. So I bring my leads up through that resin piece, and they come up through these brass tubes up into this upper section. So this is where all my wires come through, okay? I do have a rose quartz crystal in the main crystal chamber, okay? And I also have, this was just an accent as well. I added a nickel wound guitar string just for like an accent, okay? And then finally, this upper cap was printed in resin And then I just kind of put my blade side PCB up top and then glued that whole thing in place. And that's it. That is the chassis. Not very simple. It's a little bit of a complicated setup, but I was really, really happy with this one, right? So that's it. So let's come up top. All right, so here it is, the MoM, Magic of Myth. So this particular one has the, I can't remember if this is the idealized version of the grip or the grenade section or not, but it has the different sized rings up here. Awesome, awesome rendition of Luke's hilt from the cave scene, right? So one of the things that I really, really love about this hilt is the fact that we have a kill switch in the control box, all right? So anyone who, also anyone who has wired up one of these hilts will tell you that these helper boards are far from it. These helper boards are so finicky. They are prone to burning out. They are known to have swapped LEDs, which is unfortunately this one actually had swapped LEDs as well. So the lenses on the outside of this hilt had to be swapped. Yeah, so fortunately, I had a little bit of hiccups with this helper board, but we were able to get through it, right? I also assembled the reveal board in here. A lot of detail going on the reveal board. But yeah, all in all, a great hilt. I just love having a kill switch in the control box, right? So there are those lit arrows. Okay, so we hit our kill switch.
I'm Luke Skywalker.
Great sounding hilt too. And that's it. Really nothing else to go over. We don't have to go over putting the battery in or anything. The pommel just kind of stays in place. The speaker is there. It does live inside of the pommel as well. And that's it, right? PCB emitter is from CC Sabers. That is Carl's new V4 PCB emitter. And that's it. Let's come down to the bottom. Yeah, so you gotta love the lit control box. It's just a great rendition of Luke's hilt. Oh, another thing I'm failing to mention. So the customer did purchase this secondhand. Whomever he purchased it from, the thin neck was painted and it was chipped. So I had to actually go about searching for the correct paint to strip and repaint this with. This is done with, let me get it. Ace Metallic Antique Gold. So this is the closest to accurate paint that you want to use for this thin neck section. So I had to strip this back of the paint that was already on it, prep it, and then I sprayed it. It's tricky to get this to even coat. It took me a couple of tries to get that right? So that was done. And it looks great in my opinion, right? So I do have a recessed blade. However, my recessed blade is sized for my MoM. The PCB holder in this one is different from mine. Let's see if my recessed blade works in this one. Yeah, so I have a recessed blade here. They can be adjusted depending on who makes them for you. So underneath this ring will unthread. Underneath that ring, there is a set screw. Why did I say it like that? There is a set screw. I am not going to tighten this all the way down. I'm just going to kind of turn it on, swing it around for a little bit. But yeah. Let's see what else we put on here. One more.
I'm never touching that thing again.
So that's it. That is the MoM from 7Chambers. Great hilt, beautiful hilt. This one was a lot of fun to revisit. This crystal chamber, I'm really, really proud of it. And I'm really, really grateful to the customer for commissioning me to do another one of these, right? So to the customer, thank you very much for your patience and trusting me with your hilt. If anyone has any questions about this particular chassis or anything really, please do not be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.